Just crack him and he would just fire back at you, and he knocked a lot of people out just because he could take a shot so well.
Back in his heyday, Chuck Liddell looked like nobody could touch him. But that untouchable image came at a brutal price. Chuck made his name by eating shots and walking through damage, believing his iron chin would last forever.
He shouldn't be fighting. He shouldn't be fighting. At 50, he clearly can't take a punch anymore.
When everyone started pleading with him to hang up the gloves, you could already see what all those wars had done to him.
Somebody was picking on you, bullying you, maybe even hitting you, and you stood there with your hands by your side, your fist balled up, your hands by your side, and the daycare teacher was like, "Why are you not fighting back?"
Well, my mom told me I wasn't allowed to fight. I wasn't allowed to hit anybody, so, I wouldn't do it. I mean, as my mom said I can't, so I guess I'll just sit here and take it. But and it happened a few times, and he finally called my mom and talked to her and said, "You got to let him defend himself. We can't be there every time something's happening." And he's just letting him. And I was like, okay, So she took me to my grandfather and had him teach me some straight punches, and started throwing punches. And as far as defending myself, the rest is history.
So when word got out that Chuck might be dealing with serious brain trauma, nobody was surprised. It was just the inevitable conclusion to a career built on a style that guaranteed this outcome. Here's how one of MMA's most terrifying champions went way past his breaking point and what it cost him. This is the Iceman's journey.
It was Koikan Karate Do was my first style. I was black belt. I won our nationals for our style.
Charles David Liddell entered the world December 17th, 1969, in Santa Barbara, California. A single mom and his grandparents brought him up. His grandfather introduced him to the sweet science early on.
People probably don't have any idea that you have a business degree.
I want to get a PE degree, but my grandma didn't believe that was a real major. So I had to pick a major when I was a freshman. I picked accounting. I was good at it.
Outside of organized sports, however, he developed a reputation for toughness in a different way. Liddell often found himself involved in street fights, where his size, strength, and early martial arts training set him apart from his peers.
I used to even say in high school, I used to say, man, it sucks. Well, the thing I'm really good at, I can't make money doing. And I was talking about street fighting. I was going to Cal Poly at the time. I was like 19, I think. One of the resident wrestling practices goes to me, by any chance, did you jump off a car and kick a guy in the head? Yeah. How do you know?
Did you lose any fights in high school? Was there anybody you fought that somebody caught you, or did you ever none? So you don't remember ever?
When Chuck turned 12, he started learning Koikan Karate. He'd eventually get those words permanently inked on his skull to honor where it all began.
I got called into an old karate school. And they called me in because they had a black belt coming in to spar. I came in and it was John.
So I get there and the guy goes, "Oh yeah, well, I can't really fight you, so you're going to go with one of my students." There it was Chuck. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to go. I gave my card before I left and just said, if you ever really want to learn, the sport part of it or whatever, and give me a call. And
so I called him up and I'm like, practice mode. I'm like, hey, he's like, yeah, come on up. Let's go. Let's train.
His natural athleticism earned him a spot at California Polytechnic State University Wrestling Division I. In 1995, he walked away with his business accounting degree. His grandmother had steered him away from physical education because he didn't consider it legitimate education.
How did you get your nickname?
My trainer, John Hackman, gave it to me. I think it was like my third or fourth kickboxing fight. He came looking for me, couldn't find me. He finally found me. I was sleeping. He's like, "You don't get nervous before every fight?" No. They started calling me Iceman because I don't get nervous before fights.
He was the Iceman. I've never seen him lose his cool.
Despite his success, the sport offered little financial security at the time, and he often struggled to make ends meet.
I was having a lot of fun, but I wasn't making any money. And the UFC had come along during that time, but no one knew how to get into it.
During this period, he even considered leaving combat sports altogether to find a steady job that could support him long term.
So I was close to going back and getting a real job. I graduated in accounting right around 97.
Chuck dominated amateur kickboxing with 20 victories against just 2 defeats, scoring 16 knockouts along the way. He captured 2 national amateur kickboxing titles. During this period, he crossed paths with John Hackleman, a seasoned kickboxer running the Pit Gym in San Luis Obispo.
When did you meet Dana White? When did that connection happen?
Dana was actually managing, I think, Tito. And Wayne Harriman, who's friends with Tito and Dana, was a friend of mine and would see me train with Tito. And he actually told Dana, you might want to sign this guy. He might be better than Tito. So Dana signed me then. He was my manager. So he's managing me and Tito.
Simultaneously?
Yeah.
Well, before the UFC, I managed both Chuck and Tito. So, I did have a relationship with both guys.
It was awesome. I traveled around for a long time trying to promote the sport. I did a lot of things trying to just get the sport out there.
Hackelman became Chuck's most important mentor. He took Chuck's raw knockout power and molded it into the devastating striking approach that would eventually make him a UFC legend. Hackelman also coined the nickname that stuck.
I'm telling you, when Chuck Liddell was in his prime, he was one of the most terrifying fucking human beings that's ever walked the face of the earth.
1998 marked his professional mixed martial arts debut at UFC 17 down in Mobile, Alabama. He outpointed Noe Hernandez over 3 rounds. Before reaching the biggest stage, Chuck connected with Dana White, who was managing fighters at the time.
It was in Tito's head big time because every time they trained together, Tito would get beat up. I'm talking drop him on the ground and Tito refusing to get back up. Chuck would want to hook up and spar and whatever, and Tito would never want to spar.
When we trained together, I took him down way more than he took me down.
No way.
But that's why he didn't want to fight me, because he couldn't out wrestle me. And then when we're striking, I used to drop him with body shots, and he never dropped me.
He never dropped you?
No,
never.
Absolutely, positively would not fight Chuck because he knew he couldn't beat Chuck.
Chuck's early UFC run hit a major speed bump. At UFC 19 in 1999, Jeremy Horn caught him in an arm triangle choke for the technical submission victory. That would be the only time Nyman would ever submit Chuck Liddell. He bounced back hard with a string of devastating wins. From 2000 through 2002, he demolished Paul Jones, Kevin Randleman, Murillo Bustamante, and Vitor Belfort. May 27, 2001, took him to Japan, where he flatlined Guy Mezger in round 2 at Pride 14. He became the first UFC athlete to cross over and compete for the Japanese organization.
The other event got fucking huge, and then Chuck Liddell came onto the scene.
Yes.
And when Chuck Liddell was the champion, Chuck Liddell was so fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
He was this do or die berserker. He would just come at you, just swinging bombs, take one on the chin, knock dudes out. His fights were wild.
He didn't give a shit.
He was the real reason why the UFC became uber popular, because you would watch The Ultimate Fighter and it was a wild fight, a great fight, but then you need a destroyer.
Right.
You need a destroyer, and that
Yeah.
destroyer was Chuck Liddell. And
Okay.
for the run where he was at the top, where Chuck Liddell was just murking people.
So he was kind of like the Mike.
But the reigning champion Tito Ortiz wanted nothing to do with him. They'd been training together, and Tito knew exactly what Chuck brought to the table.
His fights when he knocked out Tito Ortiz, like, oh my God, he was a monster.
Right.
He was a monster.
I knew Chuck Liddell was going to win those fights. I knew he was. He had Tito's number. Tito couldn't deal with Chuck's style, his power, his wrestling. Tito couldn't take Chuck down, and Chuck was 1,000,000% in Tito's head.
It was Liddell's 4th consecutive title defense, and it emphatically reaffirmed his dominance over his rival.
By the end of
So the UFC created an interim light heavyweight belt and booked Chuck against Randy Couture at UFC 43 in 2003. Couture used crisp straight punches and dirty boxing in the clinch to shut down Chuck's wide hooks. Randy got the takedowns and finished him by TKO. That same year, Chuck entered Pride's 2003 middleweight Grand Prix. He destroyed Alistair Overeem in round 1, but fell to Quinton Rampage Jackson via second-round stoppage in the semis. When Tito finally sorted out his contract issues with the UFC, he lost his belt to Randy Couture. That opened the door for Chuck versus Tito at UFC 47 in April 2004. Chuck delivered exactly what everyone hoped for. Second-round knockout of Ortiz. Early 2005 saw Chuck chosen as a coach for the first season of The Ultimate Fighter opposite Randy Couture. The show became a massive hit. Then April 16, 2005 at UFC 52, Chuck knocked Randy Couture cold in the first round to claim the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. And that really launched everything to another level.
Rampage wasted little time in the rematch. He caught Liddell with a right hook in the first round, dropping him, and followed up with ground strikes to score a knockout just 1 minute 53 seconds into the fight. In a flash, Chuck Liddell's reign as champion was over.
Left up to the bottom.
It was a stunning defeat, the first knockout loss of Liddell's UFC career, and it marked a turning point.
Chuck, you've been the most dominant light heavyweight champion in the history of the UFC.
You could say he basically carried the sport to heights it had never seen before. Between 2005 and 2007, Chuck successfully defended his title 4 consecutive times. He beat Jeremy Horn, got revenge on Randy Couture in their trilogy fight, stopped Renato Sobral, and finished Tito Ortiz in their second meeting. That second Ortiz bout at UFC 66 shattered every UFC financial record to that point. Chuck fought through a torn MCL, but still dropped Ortiz in round 3.
When Chuck was young, he was known for having like a granite chin. You could just crack him and he would just fire back at you, and he knocked a lot of people out just because he could take a shot so well. And then one day, it just stopped working.
By 2006, Chuck Liddell had basically run through every legitimate challenger. He was the undisputed face of the company. That mohawk, those skull tattoos, and those ice-cold knockout celebrations became legendary. He put together 7 straight UFC knockouts, a record that still stands today.
Yeah, and then the knockouts came, like Rampage KO'd him, and then other people were KO'ing him, and then it just got to a point where it's just like one good punch, and you would just go out. It's like your brain knows you're so tough, and it's like, hey, we got to protect this guy. He's stupid. He's going to keep getting hit, so let's just shut off.
But every dominant champion eventually runs into someone who has their number. For Chuck, that moment arrived in 2007. May 26, 2007, at UFC 71. He put his title on the line against Quentin Rampage Jackson, the same guy who had stopped him in Japan 4 years before. This time they were fighting for UFC gold, with everything on the line.
Yeah, when I got to the weigh-in and we did the face-off, for me, I was like, oh man, Chuck looks serious, because I watched him so many times. That's when I really started to think man, I'm fighting Chuck Liddell. So that's when, for me, the nerve started. And then I hit up Randy Couture, who just happened to be a floor below me, and I go and see Randy, and I'm like, oh man, Randy, I'm scared, man. I'm scared. And Randy's like, what's going on? He's like, oh man, I just can't shake this feeling, man. I'm just so nervous about tomorrow, and I don't want to get beat up and knocked out in front of everybody. And the best advice I ever got, he said, you got to make friends with the worst enemy. When you make friends with the worst enemy, you understand that life will go on. And then I worked myself up into a lather just thinking about it. Like, yeah, I got to face my fears. I got to face my worst enemy.
Stories came out that Chuck had been hitting Vegas nightclubs during fight week. People questioned whether he was taking things seriously anymore. Chuck insisted this was normal preparation for his Vegas fights. But questions about his commitment started swirling. Just 4 months later, Chuck was back in there against Keith Jardine. Most people felt he hadn't given himself enough time to recover properly. Jardine's unorthodox style and punishing leg kicks earned him a split decision victory. Chuck had now lost 2 straight fights.
It was crazy.
And he didn't get up.
It was such a flush shot.
The brutal loss was a sobering moment, and many observers thought it might be the end of the road for Chuck.
Because his style was so aggressive, that people could just set, boom, and counter, like Rashad Evans did with him. And so you're getting his momentum coming forward and the shot, and he would get flatlined.
December 2007 brought Chuck face-to-face with Wanderlei Silva at UFC 79. 2 of the most violent knockout artists in the sport going head-to-head. They didn't disappoint anyone. For 3 incredible rounds, they went to war. Chuck took a unanimous decision victory. The fight earned 207 Fight of the Year honors. That triumph would end up being Chuck's final MMA victory.
I care about him. I care about his health. And it's over, man. We all turned 40. It's over. Listen, I've been pushing for retirement. He's my friend. I love him. I care about him. We sat down. We had a 2-hour talk. He wanted to do this. He fucking has nothing to prove. Nothing to prove. He doesn't have to prove anything to me, the rest of the world. He's got shitloads of money. There's no reason for it.
By 2008, all those years of brutal wars were finally catching up to the Iceman. September 6th, 2008, saw Chuck step in against Rashad Evans at UFC.
Chuck told me before the season started, when I asked him to do it, he said, I guarantee you, Tito will not fight me. We'll do this show and he'll pull out of the fight. I guarantee it. And that's why when Tito pulled out, I was like, holy shit. Chuck was right. And, I had to go tell Chuck that Tito pulled out. Tito pulled out of the fight.
That fucking pussy. Don't let that guy fight anymore, man. He's a fucking pussy.
In round 2, Evans landed what became one of the most brutal knockouts in UFC history. One perfect overhand right sent Chuck crashing to the canvas unconscious.
Chuck Liddell came in. He worked hard for this thing, and I think him and Rich Franklin tonight fought the type of fights that made them both famous and made them both world champions tonight. Those two went at it. He means a lot to this company, and he means a lot to the sport. He means a lot to me personally. He was a great champion. He was a great business partner. He's always going to have a home with the UFC. He gave it his last shot. You know what? He went out like Chuck Liddell would. Came out blasting, bombing, tried to put Rich away in the slugfest, and he gave the fans a good last fight with the Iceman.
Chuck returned in April 2009 to face Mauricio Shogun Rua at UFC 97. Shogun put Chuck away with strikes in the opening round. Following this defeat, UFC President Dana White publicly questioned whether Chuck should continue fighting.
People asked me for a long time why I stuck around so long. Like, if I was getting my ass kicked and then getting knocked out, it would have been a lot easier to hang it up. I was getting paid really well, and I was winning fights and then just getting caught. So you always think, oh man, I can fix that. We had a dinner together. I said, look, man, I can't figure out why this happened. I can't compete the way I used to. So, I'm done.
And I'm here today with my partner, Lorenzo Fertitta, to announce his retirement. Myself, my partners owe a lot to Chuck Liddell. And we're also here today to announce that he is becoming one of the top executives in the UFC. Chuck Liddell is now the new Executive Vice President of Business Development.
But they settled on one last fight. The plan was Tito Ortiz after they coached against each other on season 11 of The Ultimate Fighter, but Ortiz withdrew due to injury.
And Chuck Liddell and Tito are fighting. So what else you got?
Ooh, what do you think of that?
Not my cup of tea, but
You're going to watch it.
For sure. Well,
I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, we'll watch it. We might do a fight companion for it.
Some people say it shouldn't happen, right?
Oh no, I don't think it shouldn't happen. I look at it more like I think if Chuck Liddell was still employee of the UFC getting paid $400,000 just to chill or whatever he was doing for the UFC, he would not be fighting. I think it's more of a money play, which bums me out because I think Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz, what they did for the sport, should be compensated for the rest of their lives. It bums me out they have to fight to make money. That bums me out.
Chuck's farewell UFC performance came against Rich Franklin at UFC 115 in June. He got knocked out at the end of round 1, his third straight knockout loss.
Can't be fighting. He shouldn't be fighting at 50. He clearly can't take a punch anymore.
July 10th, 2009 saw Chuck inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame Pioneer Wing. December 29th, 2010, he made his retirement official at the UFC 125 press conference. The UFC brought him on as Vice President of Business Development. They called it a lifetime position.
He just felt like he always had Tito's number. But this is the problem, is like Tito wins now. When it all said and done, Tito KO'd him. And he KO'd him more soundly than Chuck ever KO'd Tito.
Yeah.
Tito put Chuck out. He put him out. You're dealing with a guy whose brains are, it's just, he's been scrambled too many times.
He didn't immediately make a retirement speech in the cage, but the consensus in the MMA community was that this would be the end. And in March 2020, Chuck Liddell confirmed he had retired from MMA competition again, this time for good.
2016 brought new ownership when the UFC sold for $4 billion. The new regime restructured everything. Chuck Liddell and fellow Hall of Famer Matt Hughes both lost their executive roles. So much for that lifetime job.
He has been saying that he misses it. It was his favorite thing.
Yeah, I miss playing baseball.
He misses it.
To me, it's more of a sad story.
See, I think Tito, he might actually want this fight just to fight Chuck again.
On November 24th, 2018, Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz stepped into the cage one last time.
2018 saw 48-year-old Chuck announce his comeback. He set his sights on a trilogy fight with Tito Ortiz. This time, it wouldn't be under the UFC banner, but through Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions.
All done the right way at the right time.
I don't have any regrets. I had a great time. I mean, it was fun. I got paid a lot of money to do what I love for a living, and my body held together pretty dang well.
Dana White was furious about the fight. He called the California State Athletic Commission's decision to approve it disgusting. He insisted he had retired Chuck in 2010 specifically to protect his long-term health. November 24th, 2018 saw Chuck and Tito enter the cage one final time at the Forum in Inglewood, California. It ended quickly. Tito dropped Chuck with punches at 4:24 of the first round. Chuck's 7th career knockout loss and 4th consecutive dating back to the California State Athletic Commission hit Chuck with an indefinite medical suspension It essentially banned him from competing anywhere in the United States. The Guardian called it a repugnant spectacle. Critics argued it unnecessarily exposed Chuck to additional brain damage. March 2020 brought Chuck's final retirement announcement from MMA competition. The consequences of Chuck's fighting career didn't disappear when he stopped competing. All that accumulated damage from years of violent exchanges followed him home. October 11, 2021 brought Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies to Chuck's Hidden Hills residence for a domestic disturbance call. A verbal disagreement between Chuck and his wife Heidi Northcott had turned physical with pushing. Their daughter witnessed everything but couldn't determine who started it. Chuck had a small red mark on his face and a minor mark on his chest. Heidi showed no visible injuries. Chuck got arrested on misdemeanor domestic battery charges. They booked him at Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff's Station and released him on $20,000 bail. Hours after getting out, Chuck posted on Instagram, "I was the victim of what happened last night at our home, and the case details will prove that. Deputies told me they would arrest my wife since I didn't fight back when she attacked me, even though I had bruises and cuts. I offered to go instead of her. This was just another time I tried to keep a family mental health situation private out of love and loyalty to her, but now I see that's impossible. This relationship needs to end." October 18th saw the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office drop all charges against both parties. They said there wasn't enough evidence. They classified it as a cross-complaint with each side blaming the other. 4 days after the incident, Chuck filed for divorce. They'd been together since around 2009 and had 2 children. The legal battle dragged on for almost 4 years. September 2022, custody evaluation documents revealed disturbing claims from Heidi Northcott. She alleged Chuck was showing symptoms of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the brain disease linked to repeated head injuries. Court documents reported by The Blast quoted her saying, "He's been knocked out countless times and has CTE. He can't remember things and gets stuck when he talks. He's going to develop dementia or Alzheimer's. He has severe sleep apnea." Northcott made additional mental health allegations. She described depression, paranoia, impulsive behavior, and using drugs and alcohol to escape reality. She claimed his behavior had become more unpredictable and aggressive. CTE can only be confirmed through brain examination after death. But Chuck's career provided plenty of reason for concern. 7 knockout losses in his career. 4 of them consecutive in his final 5 fights. His aggressive stand and bang style meant taking heavy shots to land his own. Years of hard sparring only added to the damage. Concerns about Chuck's brain health started long before the 2022 allegations. As far back as 2012, reporters noticed slurred speech and word searching in interviews. A 2007 Good Morning Texas appearance showed him seeming drowsy, slurring words, and actually dozing off during the interview. The Nevada State Athletic Commission demanded drug testing before approving his next fight. He passed. Years later, Chuck explained he'd been sick, partied the night before, and taken a heavy dose of Ambien. The effects lasted longer than expected. He couldn't even remember flying from Texas to California. The custody evaluation recommended Chuck and his ex-wife share joint custody of their children. The court ordered random drug testing for both parents. The divorce finalized in April. Terms included shared legal and physical custody. Chuck agreed to $5,000 monthly child support, a $700,000 education fund, and covering medical expenses and activities. Heidi got a one-time spousal support payment of. Chuck's lawyer Juliana Loyola stated, after defeating numerous false accusations against Chuck, both parties reached a divorce settlement outside court. Chuck is an excellent father. He has always and will continue to prioritize his children. October 2025 saw Chuck remarry. He married Heidi Ray in Las Vegas. Chuck has taken proactive steps about his brain health. In 2024, he traveled to BioAccelerator in Colombia for stem cell treatments designed to reduce joint inflammation, prevent CTE development, and improve longevity. The facility runs clinical trials for concussion syndrome and CTE. Chuck's situation isn't unique. It highlights systemic problems in MMA. Unlike the NFL or boxing, MMA has no fighters union or pension system. Retired fighters often face physical and financial struggles without union-backed health care or retirement benefits. Many resort to crowdfunding or unrelated work. The Guardian documented former fighters' struggles and inadequate protection against exploitative comebacks driven by financial desperation. Chuck also got defrauded in a 2007 real estate scam. He invested in properties with developer Kelly Gearhart, who later pled guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. The escrow officer improperly released Chuck's funds and allegedly forged signatures. Chuck never got the properties. In 2015, Chuck won nearly $2 million in damages. Despite everything, Chuck's pioneer legacy continues. He stays active through podcasts, promotional events, and UFC appearances. In 2025 interviews, he praised current fighters like Alex Pereira as legitimate warriors. His story represents both triumph and cautionary tale. Chuck helped transform MMA from underground spectacle into worldwide phenomenon. He brought millions to events and inspired countless future fighters. But his aggressive chin-first approach carried severe long-term consequences. As of 2026, at 56 years old, Chuck continues managing health challenges. His ex-wife's CTE allegations remain unproven, but align with patterns seen in other combat sports veterans. Memory problems, speech issues, sleep apnea, personality changes. The real question is whether his body held up as well as he thinks, and more importantly, whether his brain did too.